What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel and another episode of properly built drift car. In today's episode, we are finally putting the 2JZ back in the S14. You guys, if you haven't seen my video for the engine build, I'll put a link right here and I'll put a link in the description. But basically, to sum it up, it is full forged internals, full drivetrain is done. The engine's capable of 1,000+ horsepower. However, we are going to be limited on the turbo. I am running a Precision 6266 Gen 2 ball bearing turbo. What that means is the compressor housing is smaller than the back. This way, this thing breathes at a higher RPM. 2Js love to breathe up top. So we're going with a bigger exhaust housing and the compressor housing than the front. This way, it'll allow me to get a lot of mid-range torque and high horsepower out of the engine. One other thing I wanted to address and mention is after running this engine in the car for the first time, we had a lot of exhaust heat problems in the engine bay. Obviously, this engine does not belong to the 240 chassis, so spare room is pretty much non-existent. The turbo sits right here, the downpipe sits right here, the wastegate actuator, all that stuff is just right here. It was creating a lot of heat. My brake lines were getting really hot, which was causing the brake fluid to be overheated, which then causes other issues. So this time we're being proactive about it. We've put some heat wrap on the firewall and the rail. I've heat wrapped all the lines that were affected by it, and I've also put a turbo blanket on, and I heat wrapped the header that were already ceramic coated. So hopefully now the heat control is going to be a lot better and we're not going to have the issues that we did the first time around. So for the transmission setup, I'm running a dog box, which is out of NASCAR cars. It's a T101A. It's got straight cut gears, only 4 gears in the transmission. The reason why I went with that is because those transmissions are easy to take apart, replace the gears, and basically it's easy to maintain that transmission. It is a little bit more expensive than your typical R154 or CD09. That's what people use for JZs. But like I said, this transmission is easier to work with. Parts are a lot more available for the internal components, and it is a smaller transmission and a lighter in general, so it's always a plus for a race car. I'm using an automatic JZ bell housing with an adapter plate. Inside I have a dual disc clutch, lighter flywheel, and a hydraulic throwout bearing. And this setup is good for what I'm aiming for, which is 600 horsepower. I am maxing out that transmission. Let's see if it lasts a season. If it does, great. If it doesn't, I might consider upgrading to a GSR transmission, which is a top shifter and it's got a little stronger gears and internals. So we're gonna start putting the motor in the car now. It's already set up on the lift. I'm gonna do a time lapse of that and hope you guys enjoy it. Issues that I had with the previous motor was oil starvation. So with this motor, I made a change to my oiling system. This is something that Red Dan from Red Industries introduced me to and explained to me. What I ended up doing is I ended up doing a -10 outlet straight out of the oil pump, which what that does is it eliminates a passage in the block from the oil pump to where the oil filter housing is. This way you got the oil pump pushing -10 straight out, and you're getting rid of 290-degree angles, which slow down the oil pressure in the engine. Now when you do that, however, you lose the original oil filter housing location. So what we ended up picking up is an Earl's fitting, which is a basically oil filter relocation with -10 fittings on it. This way the flow of the oil stays in larger diameter, because one other thing I didn't mention is that passage in the oil block is actually smaller, so you're already reducing the volume that could go through it. Alright you guys, so we've been at this for about 2 days now. We got the motor in, everything's buttoned up, all the fluids are in. Since I got the car up in the air, I wanted to go over a couple things that I ran into. Since I am using a new type oil pan from Excessive Manufacturing, it holds about a quart and a half more oil. They were able to do that by lowering down the pan and then getting rid of this hump here on a stock pan. But that caused problems for me because now this area right here hits the subframe and I had to move the motor forward as to where it was before. I lost about an inch there, so the motor sits an inch forward now, which then led into problems with the intercooler piping being too long and off, so I had to make modifications to that. The exhaust luckily had a lot of room to move forward, so I did not have to modify it. Since we're down here, I want to show you guys what I'm running. I am running a 3.5 inch downpipe and a 3.5 inch oval exhaust. I made this myself last year and it seemed to do just fine on the dyno. Didn't have any restrictions. It was really loud and I really liked the tone. I could have gone with a 4 inch. A lot of guys go with the 4 inch. That way the car is ready and capable for more boost. But honestly, I like the exhaust to be a little restrictive. I feel it gives you a little bit more bottom end by having that restriction in the exhaust. And personally, I think it's actually louder because you're pushing more air through a smaller diameter. It makes it sound more like it's screaming. So that's why I went with a 3.5 inch. Didn't seem to have any problems with the dyno with 600 wheel horsepower, so I don't expect any problems now either. One of the things I had to focus on yesterday was the oiling system in the car. I had to replace the oil cooler because the old engine had debris in it. The oil cooler has a high potential of contamination. I really don't want to run a used cooler with dirt in it on the brand new engine. Also, I ended up not plumbing it right now. I rerouted the lines straight from the new relocation of the oil filter back to the engine. This way, we're running break-in oil in the engine right now. As the new engine tends to break in, there is going to be some more debris than usual. I don't want that getting into the new cooler. So as we're breaking the engine in, we're just not going to use the oil cooler. It's fine, we're not going to beat on it, so the oil temperature shouldn't get too excessive. Once that's all broken in, I'll drain the oil, I'll put the actual oil in it that I'm going to be running, and then I'll plumb the new oil cooler together, and it'll be the way it's going to stay. So we're pretty much just about ready to start the engine. I just got to finish up some wiring inside. I got to put my battery in, my fuse box, and all the switches. Once we're done with that, we're going to do a first initial crank to build up the oil pressure. We're going to leave the spark plugs out of all the cylinders. That way we're not building up actual pressure and causing excessive resistance on all the bearings. We're going to crank that till we see oil pressure coming out through the turbo oil feed line. Once we see that the oil is coming out, we're going to know that there's been a circulation of oil pressure in the entire engine. We'll put the spark plugs back in, we'll fire up the fuel system, and hopefully the engine will fire right up. Alright you guys, so the motor's pretty much buttoned up, everything's done and ready to go. However, we did run into a problem while trying to do the first initial start. We're going to address that problem in the next vlog. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button if you like this vlog and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace!